President, I rise again in strong support of my no Washington exemption from Obamacare amendment. I have refiled it on the CR, which is before us, the spending bill, and it is a germane amendment as I've filed it to the CR. It's amendment number 1983. Mr. President, again, we're on a timetable, a collision course, where unless we act, a horrible policy and an illegal Obama administration rule will go into effect. And so it is important that we vote and we act, and we do that now. That's why, Mr. President, as soon as we came back from the August recess, I brought this to the attention of the Senate and the Congress and the country, and I demanded a vote. It wasn't my choice to be on that tight timetable. Certainly wasn't my choice of the administration issue a draft illegal rule, but that is where we are, and so we must vote and act before October 1st. And so after being blocked out of a vote on that on the previous matter on the floor, the energy efficiency bill, blocked out for 2 weeks by the distinguished majority leader and others, after being blocked out from that, I bring it again in the context of this spending bill as a germane amendment, number 1983, to this spending bill. Again, Mr. President, the principle is clear. And to me, it's the first principle of democracy. In our case of the United States of America, what's good for America should be good for Washington, and what is applied to America should absolutely be applied in the same way to Washington, across the board, certainly including Obamacare. Mr. President, we had a debate about that several years ago during the Obamacare debate. And actually, that concept at least won out, and we were able to add a Grassley amendment to the bill, which was passed into final law. I was a strong supporter of that language. Was somewhat amazed that we got it included, but we did in the democratic process, and it is now part of the law, part of the statute. And that law says clearly, unequivocally, every member of Congress, every official congressional staff has to go to the exchange for their health care, the same fallback plan as is there for the American people under Obamacare. I advocated for that strongly since the very beginning of the Obamacare debate. Whatever the fallback plan for America is, that should be the plan for Washington. That should be the plan. No other choices, no special privileges or exemptions or subsidies for Washington. And so that was part of the statute that passed into law. But I guess, Mr. President, it was a classic case of what Nancy Pelosi said: we need to pass the law in order to figure out what's in it. Because after it passed, a lot of folks on Capitol Hill read that provision and said, oh, you know what? We can't live with this. We can't let this stand. We need to, quote unquote, fix this. And so there was furious scheming and furious lobbying to fix that simple concept that what applies to America should apply to Washington. Where that ended up after months of scheming and lobbying was the President of the United States, President Obama, getting personally involved. This is confirmed in numerous news reports, and making sure, ordering his administration to issue a special rule to save Congress from this horrible fate that's being visited on at least 8 million Americans. And so right as Congress was leaving for the August recess, conveniently getting out of town, away from the scene of the crime, the Obama administration issued this draft rule. And in my opinion, it is clearly, unequivocally illegal because it's in conflict with the language of the statute. The rule does two things. First of all, even though the statute says clearly that every member of Congress and all official congressional staff go to the exchange, the draft rule says, well, we don't know what official staff is. So we're going to leave that up to every individual member of Congress to decide who on his or her staff is official staff for purposes of this provision. We're never going to second guess them. So in theory, a member of Congress can say, well, my committee staff is an official staff. My leadership staff is an official staff. In fact, in theory, under this proposed rule, a member of Congress can say nobody on my staff is, quote, official staff for purposes of this provision. And OPM has made clear we're not going to second guess that. That's ridiculous on its face. And second, Mr. President, the rule says for members and any staff who do go to the exchange, they get to take a big, fat, taxpayer-funded subsidy with them, subsidy that's completely unavailable to any other American at that income level going to the exchange. That's not in the statute at all. That's contrary to the statute, the letter, the law, the spirit. That's contrary to it completely. And again, Mr. President, that's what provoked me to act with many other members. And I want to recognize and thank all of the co-sponsors of this important legislation on the Senate side, and also Congressman DeSantis of Florida and all House co-sponsors of identical legislation on the House side. So our fix is simple, and it's basic, and it's important. And it is, first of all, let's live by the law with regard to Congress. So every member of Congress, all congressional official staff have to go to the exchange as mandated by law with no special deal, exemption, subsidy, only what's available to other Americans going to the exchange. The whole purpose of that language was for Congress to feel the dislocation and inconvenience and experience of millions of other Americans going to the exchange, 8 million or more going there against their will. They had health care. They had employer-provided health care. They heard the president say, if you have coverage that you like, you can keep it. And they found out that was a big lie. And now they're losing that and going to the exchange. The whole purpose of the language was that Congress walk in their shoes. And this amendment goes further and applies the same principle of fairness to the administration, says the president, the vice president, all of their political appointees do the same thing. Go to the exchange for their health care, just like every other American does. No special deals, exemptions, subsidies, no special rules. Now, Mr. President, again, this is very time sensitive because this rule is set to be made final October 1st. That's not my choice. I think the rule is flat out illegal. That's a decision or an action of the administration, but it does demand that we vote and act now. That's why, Mr. President, as soon as we came back from the August recess and went back into session, I filed the fix and I demanded a proper up or down vote. Unfortunately, that was blocked out for 2 weeks by the distinguished majority leader, and so I come to the floor again in the context of this spending bill. Very appropriate to have the debate on this spending bill. This is spending we're talking about. I filed it as a germane amendment to this spending bill, and we need a full debate and vote on this matter before October 1st. Now, Mr. President, interestingly, in the previous bill, after blocking me out of any vote, the distinguished majority leader said he had no problem with a vote on this, clean, up or down. I guess he said that in theory because it never happened in practice. But this is a perfect, opportune, appropriate time to have that up or down vote. Won't delay anything. It's perfectly appropriate that it be on the spending bill. This is a germane amendment. And so, Mr. President, I urge us to vote and act and not block out this debate and not block out this vote. My request is as simple and basic and straightforward as that. And I think it's consistent with the distinguished majority leader's promise that we'd have a vote. He said that. Again, that must have been in theory because he blocked it in practice. So, Mr. President, in that spirit, I ask unanimous consent that the pending amendments be set aside and it be in order to call up my amendment numbered 1983.
The senator from Montana. The objection is heard.
Mr. President, reclaiming my time, I just think that's very unfortunate. It's very inconsistent with what the distinguished majority leader said. We need a debate. We need a vote on this matter. It should happen before October 1st, and it will happen. I can guarantee you that. I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be before October 1st, but it will happen. We will have this debate and vote. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.